Hey, what's going on, everybody? Long time no see, but hey, welcome to my first of a new series of videos here, and I figured that if I'm going to start a new series, I'm going to make it easy on myself. So of course, yes, today we are going to be discussing my favorite horror slasher, my favorite horror franchise of all time, Chucky. And to start things off, we are going to be taking a closer look at what was not only just a prop, but also a plot device, a MacGuffin, and something that actually changed the lore as we once knew it. So, for today's episode of Explore the Lore, we're going to be taking a deeper look at the Heart of Damballa. The Heart of Damballa was first introduced in the fourth film in the Child's Play series, or the Of Chucky series if you want to call it that, and that of course was Bride of Chucky. This was the brainchild of Don Mancini, and I want to say that as time has passed it's actually become a welcome addition, even though we actually haven't seen it in 20 years since Seed of Chucky. I don't know about you. I, of course, have been a fan of this franchise since I was a little kid, starting with the first film and waiting for all the sequels patiently. So, I guess from my perspective, this is still a recent addition, but yeah, it's actually Seed of Chucky is 20 years old, and that was the last time we saw the Heart of Damballa. Now, the first thing we should look at is, why does this artifact, this talisman, even exist in the first place? Well, of course, in the plot of the movie Bride of Chucky, it was a required item, so this way Chucky and Tiffany can transfer their souls into human bodies. And that makes sense, because honestly, playing by the rules as we once knew them, it wasn't going to make sense anymore for the context of this film. And of course, when we see the Heart of Damballa, we first see it in an image of Charles Lee Ray's dead body next to a toy store, because, you know, they take pictures like that for the newspaper all the time. And yes, and even though it was an actual photo from the 1988 film, they did Photoshop the amulet around his neck, and we are led to believe that this was something that actually had existed this whole time. So why wasn't it mentioned before? Well, because quite frankly, it was maybe not needed. And seeing as how in the original 1988 movie, on that fateful cold Chicago night at a toy store at the corner of Wabash and Van Buren, yeah, I'm a fucking dork. Charles Lee Ray had transferred his soul into a good guy doll, and we are led to believe that he was wearing this amulet around his neck when he did it, so it kind of begs the question, is this something he always needed? I am going to say yes and no. I am going to say that if you are able to wield Dambalic magic like the way Chucky can, that you can get around not needing these, talismans or, relics to aid it along. Is it helpful? Yes. I do think it was required for his initial soul transfer, especially transferring his soul into an inanimate object like a doll. Now, before its introduction in Bride of Chucky, the lore as we knew it was that you transfer your soul, and if you want to get out of that body, you have to transfer your soul into the first person you told your secret identity to, and there was a time window. Now, I don't know if this works if you're in a human body trying to transfer to a human body. That part's a little unknown, but from what we know, at least in Chucky's case, he was going to be trapped in the doll forever if he didn't do this within a certain amount of time. The Heart of Damballa, I feel like, negates a lot of these rules. I feel like that now you can kind of do one wherever, whenever, to whomever, and that's okay, because you're not always going to be in an ideal situation where you can just go ahead and transfer your soul all willy-nilly. There's got to be some sort of grounding here. But how come this wasn't brought up in the first three movies? If this item was so important, why waste all that time trying to chase Andy? Well, and this is what I do. I always pick apart, storylines, plot lines, try to fill in plot holes, and yes, this one kind of did leave a bit of a plot hole. Why is this a thing now? Why did it take 4 movies for this to be a thing now? Well, I'm gonna say that for initially, Chucky did not need it. Also, too, he was just transferred into a doll. There's no saying that he woke up right away, and even if he did, coming up alive in doll form might have not been helpful for his situation, so maybe he didn't have the opportunity to go to his body to confiscate the amulet. Also, we have to look at the fact that initially Chucky didn't even have the goal of transferring his soul out of the body. It wasn't until he got shot and had questions for himself And when our good friend John Bishop, aka Dr. Death, Chucky's voodoo mentor, explained to him how this shit works, well, that's when it became an issue. Now, surprisingly though, we have to agree that the Heart of Damballa did exist in the first three movies, but just simply wasn't attainable. And speaking of the first three movies, and particularly the 1988 film, this wasn't necessarily a new concept just for Bride of Chucky, because in the longer cut of the film, which I really wish they had footage of that would be amazing. But all we have are pictures, but this, what you're seeing right here, is what the original Heart of Damballa was going to be. Does this mean that this is the Heart of Damballa and they just changed its design over time? Or is there more than one on this planet? I think it could be like that. It could be like the Lament configuration, Hellraiser. There isn't necessarily just the one, but they all basically do the same thing. Now, it has been 20 years since we've last seen the Heart of Damballa. As I mentioned before, this is still a recent addition for me. This is still a newer thing. I guess when you're a kid, time moves slower, so those first three Child's Play films moved really slow for me. Bride of Chucky felt new and fresh, and hate to say it, but here we are, 26 years later, and it still feels like a fresh movie to me. It still feels like one of the newer sequels, if you will. Now, of course, its usage in Seed of Chucky was a bit contrived and played up for comedics, and even then, I still tried to give it some sort of grounded, some sort of serious logic, because unlike Don Mancini, I actually do like the voodoo element, and I also used to find it interesting that a character like Chucky could even have the knowledge and skill to even use something like this to his advantage. But apparently, it was something he took seriously, because look at his fucking apartment in that original film. I mean, Jesus. He was definitely deep into this shit. And yes, having the words on the back of the amulet conveniently for Glenn to use to wake up his parents, I'm gonna let that slide, only because as we would later learn that identical vessels are easier to inhabit when Chucky was trying to possess 72 good guy dolls with himself and successfully did so. I'm looking at it like this, that, even though they weren't the same dolls from Bride of Chucky, which, by the way, no offense to any of you fans that believe that, but realistically, the fuck? First of all, those dolls in Bride of Chucky were evidence. They're probably still in the evidence locker to this day. Letting a movie studio refurbish them, even cost-wise, it's just better to build from the ground up. So yes, the dolls in Seed of Chucky were fucking movie props. They weren't a good guy doll. They weren't a wedding bell doll. That's just my opinion on it. If you want to disagree with that, that's fine, but I'm just trying to add a little bit of real world logic just to ground it a little bit. Sorry for the nerd rant. Now, why haven't we seen the Heart of Damballa since? Well, I'm just going to chalk it up to that, Chucky being a wielder of Damballa magic at the level that he's at now, that it was no longer required for him. It wasn't a prerequisite that he needed anymore. At this point, Damballa fully had his back, as we found out that Damballa, yes, can abandon you and leave you completely magicless and, without the power to transfer your soul into anything, but seeing as how Chucky put in the work and was still putting in the work, and if there's one thing I gotta say about the first season of that show, that's exactly what he was doing. He was putting in the work for his voodoo magic so this way his spells can work properly. So he didn't need the talisman at that point. Even when he inhabited Alice, as we would later find out, we did not see it on him. Of course, I did have a weird theory that maybe it was just inside of him. Just so this way he doesn't have to worry about keeping track of it, because, hey, I mean, look, we've seen Andy stored a gun inside of him. Chucky swallowed a set of car keys and cursed Chucky. I mean, he's still doll enough where he can do that kind of shit. So I would have been okay with that, but we haven't seen it since. It's just safe to say that it's something that's gone, or that his voodoo magic has grown beyond even needing that, and I'm okay with that. It's still funny to me to think that it was 20 years ago that we last saw this relic, and it's become a beloved prop in the community, enough so that, yes, you could buy replicas of the Heart of Damballa amulet. I've even seen it at Spirit Halloween, and I wouldn't even mind seeing it return in a later installment, because I would like to think that we are still going to get at least one more movie. It would be cool if they at least made a reference to it, or just made an appearance in some way, shape, or form, just to tie it all together. Anyhow, that's all I really have to say on this topic particularly. I was going to do a much longer video to explain the Chucky voodoo in general from start to finish, but it ended up becoming too long of a video, and it's just too broad of a topic, and there's stuff you could easily forget. And Chucky isn't the only topic I'm looking to do these Explore the Lore videos for, because I am a fan of many different franchises and from many different genres. Yes, horror is easily at the top of that list, but there's also other franchises that I love and other IPs that I just adore that have lore pieces like this that I feel like they just don't get talked about enough, or they're not. I don't know, but that's just my point of view of it. Hopefully, if that has value to you, and if you want to see more videos like this, well, then you know what to do. Yeah.